Welcome to this edition of In Depth Alaska. I'm Tracy Sinclair, and February is Black History Month. Now, this originally began as a week back in 1926 and then was expanded to a month and formally recognized in 1976 by President Gerald Ford. February is chosen because it contains the birthday of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. We wanted to learn more, so the best thing I think you can do is talk to a librarian because they're going to know. And so joining me now is Kim Cameron with the Anchorage Public Library. She is a youth services librarian. And so Kim, I would love to hear some recommendations about some books of influential African Americans that we can learn about during this month.
Yes, I have a whole host of books to show you today to talk about. We have everything from nonfiction that specifically covers Alaska, Black lives living in Alaska. We have poetry and a children's book. And one of my favorite books we're going to talk about today is The Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler.
Oh, I would love to hear. So why do you say that that is one of your favorite books?
I read the book during the pandemic, and I remember getting to a certain point in the book where I just cried. I bawled. It was so impactful, so beautifully written, that it immediately became one of my favorite books.
Excellent. And so let's start with some adult books. Now, if I'm somebody that's coming in and I say, not really a fiction reader, as you said, kind of a nonfiction reader. Can you find me something?
Yeah.
What would be a good recommendation for me?
So the first recommendation I have is Black Lives in Alaska. It was published in 2002. It is written by Ian Hartman and David Reamer. Ian Hartman is a professor of history at the University of Alaska Anchorage, and David Reamer is a public historian and journalist who writes for the Anchorage Daily News. And then the book also includes a foreword by Calvin Williams, who served as an NAACP president here in Alaska. The book details Alaskan history with a focus on the contributions, the achievements, and the struggles that African Americans faced here in Alaska from the mid-19th century all the way to the last 2 decades of the 20th century and the first few years of the 21st century. So Hartman and Reamer cover, they document the first presence of Black people in Alaska, Black men in Alaska. Early as the 1840s, whalers came all the way from Massachusetts and other parts of New England to the icy waters of the Arctic Oceans. And they detail wartime Alaska and how global conflict created new opportunities for Black populations, as well as limiting the pursuit of other opportunities. They discuss discrimination in post-World War II Alaska. I think the book really details the complex relationship between different groups of minorities in Alaska and how things like legislation and discriminatory policies, wartime Alaska, military presence, even things like extraction capitalism and Alaska's ever-changing like economic fortunes and how they have an effect on the livelihood of Black people living in Alaska.
That's interesting. Now, you were also saying that do you have some fiction books? And I know you mentioned poetry. Where would we go from here?
Yeah, I do have a poetry book. So this book I have is African American Poetry, 250 Years of Struggle and Song. It's actually a book that I have in my personal collection as well as it's in the library collection. I think it is a beautiful book, and that's why I chose it. It's physically it's very beautiful. It's kind of like a sweeping anthology that spans 250 years of American poetry. And I kind of think of it as a chorus of African American voices kind of spanning a continuum. And it's so well organized. It starts in kind of like 18th century kind of colonial America, and it starts with poets like Phillis Wheatley, all the way to like contemporary 21st century poetry. The book includes even things like the poems that you would recite while doing jump rope, or just songs and that you would sing. The the themes that go on that span through this book are of grief and joy and survival, and joy as resistance.
That sounds lovely, and the way you describe it as well. Some books, I'm an ebook reader. I tend to go straight to the ebooks, but that feels like something that you'd want a physical copy of, like you'd want to hold it in your hands.
The book is it's beautiful. It's so well done. I sometimes I will just pick it up and I'll read a poem here or there, and then I'll put it away. You can read it from start to finish, or just leisurely go along through the book and see where you land.
That sounds amazing. Let's talk about children's books, because as you said, you're the youth services librarian. What kind of books would you recommend for children for this month?
So I recommend the book Sulwe by Lupita Nyong'o that was published in 2019. I think the book is just beautiful. It is a touching story about a young girl who is the darkest in her family. And she describes her mother being the color of dawn and her father being the color of midday or afternoon. And her sister is the color of high noon, and she's the color of midnight. And she feels isolated from her family and her community because she looks different, and she feels like she's treated different. And it's a story of acceptance, of acceptance of oneself, and the importance of having these conversations with children when they're having these kind of difficult observations of themselves and the world around them.
That sounds interesting and kind of heartbreaking at the same time.
Yeah, it is. It was a little bit heartbreaking to read, but I also think it was so beautifully done. There's some imagery in the book that's just so powerful. It's written by Lupita Nyong'o, and illustrations are by Vishti Harrison, and they illustrate this kind of personification of daylight and nighttime, and they look the same. And I think it kind of highlights the sameness that we, our similarities that we share. Rather than our differences.
Now, if somebody is interested in picking up one of these books, and I certainly hope that they are because they sound fascinating, what is the best way? How can they, if they haven't been to the library in years or they're not regular library goers, how do we do this?
Yeah, just come on over to the library. As long as you're an Anchorage resident, we're happy to sign you up for library card and show people how to use catalog. We can look materials up ourselves and make recommendations right there on the spot. But yeah, come on over to the library and we can look this up for you.
I would like to thank my guest, Kim Cameron, with the Anchorage Public Library's Youth Services Librarian. Thank you so much, Kim, for stepping in and giving us some recommendations.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.